Hello, everyone. Uh, Happy Friday. So I thought we'd end the week with just finding a bit more clarity around this, very, very popular word at the moment, narcissist and narcissism. It's like, I think it's like the probably the most popular word at the moment. And people are using it, to describe anyone for any kind of behavior that may be a bit self-centered or I don't know, a bit that they don't like. So in that sense, I think it's important to be clear on what we're actually referring to. Um, before we sort of make these random diagnoses of people, or where we use the word and it just kind of loses its meaning, as it is a bit at the moment, I think. Um, and also that, the word itself is kind of rendering fear in people, I find, And the funny thing is, we're all meant to be a bit narcissistic. Um, it's not that it's, we need to eradicate all narcissism from within us. No, we're meant to have some. Um, I almost describe healthy narcissism as sort of the image of a flower in a field of other flowers, or of all different varieties. And, this one little flower believes that it's the most beautiful thing in the world, that it's here to shine out in all its glory, in its uniqueness. And that is what we're all called to do. We're all called to shine in our uniqueness and to believe in our uniqueness, to want to celebrate it and share it with others. So that's healthy narcissism. What we're talking about today is the opposite of that, though. That is almost, it would be the image of that little flower stomping down on the other flowers, or, trying to cut off their supply of food, or sunlight, or trying to rob them of their glory, in order to have it all themselves, to have all the nutrients for themselves so that they can be the grandest of all. So, in the context of the work I do and what we've been talking about recently, the question is, we want to know, how do we know whether the narcissist in your life, whether that be a parent, a partner, a friend, a boss, how do we know whether they are just a bit narcissistic as opposed to being fully blown narcissistic personality disorder? And that it's really important to be clear on that distinction. And it can be a bit confusing for people sometimes, I think, when people talk about narcissistic traits. Um, what are those exactly, and how do we know when it leads into more serious personality disorder? Um, you know, when we talk about a personality disorder, we're talking about a pathology. And although that sounds like a very scary word, it's not really. Pathology just means it's all pervasive, it's entrenched, it's extreme. It's not a normal, it's abnormal, is how it presents itself. And when we're talking about narcissistic pathology, it just means that it's enduring, so it's unchanging, it's a constant. This is not something that changes from, one day to the next. Really, it's enduring. It's kind of it's there. It's just there all the time. Whether it's being expressed, not always, but it's there in the person. It's sort of something that's in their core almost. It's part of the personality. Um, but the thing I've said, like I've said, we're all a bit guilty. I don't know if it's guilty, but we're all prone to having narcissistic behaviors at times. So by means of example now, so that we can see the pathology in comparison. For example, you might join a sports team and it's your first match. You end up scoring 3 goals. Um, and, for the next sort of week or so, you have this air of sort of what can I say? Believing you're a better player than the rest, and sort of, walking with a bit of a strut, and you know, about yourself, a bit of a narcissistic episode, believing you're better than everyone else. But this soon wanes, once reality hits, and that's sort of it was just a momentary phase, and you settle down and become one of the team, and yeah, we move on. Or for example, you may have bought yourself a new outfit, you've lost a bit of weight, and you find yourself sort of walking around with a new sense of being just a level above everyone else. And especially in terms of the person you see that's maybe overweight, dressed shabbily, not taking much care, you might sort of just have this air of feeling better than them, or believing yourself better than them. But once again, this is sort of a momentary narcissistic experience, and it soon wanes. You might you might have a bad headache like I am today, and that soon brings you down out of that. So this would be sort of the more sort of narcissistic traits which we all at some point have, and there's nothing to be afraid of, or worried about. It's just part of our human experience. So what distinguishes this kind of what they call situational narcissism, um, from the pathological kind? And it's just that it's situational, it's fleeting, it's not all pervasive, um, and in fact, another sort of qualifying criteria is that the person is able to sort of reflect on it, and can come away feeling a bit sort of, um, there might be a bit of a guilt about how they've been, or something like that. You know that it's gone beyond the trait level, though, when you observe these behaviors frequently in the person, and consistently and intensely. So a pathological narcissist will routinely use destructive, manipulative tactics, whether that's overtly, covertly, sort of beneath the radar stuff, all of that. Rolling of the eyes, all of these sorts of things, in order to gain and maintain false superiority, and to exploit people in order to keep that, to get that. So that's like that little flower kind of stomping all around and maintaining itself as the dominant, in the field. So if there is a narcissist in your life, be it parent, whoever, you might want to ask yourself about these sort of characteristics, because these are the pathological characteristics. And this might help you to sort of really define it, whether the narcissist in your life is a full-blown personality disorder, more likely than someone who just has these traits, every now and then. So there's a list of 11 here, so I'll read them out. I won't take too long over them because it will be a long video otherwise. And I know it's Friday evening, so I'm sure you've got more exciting things lined up. So here we go. Ask yourself, does the narcissistic person in your life, number one, purposefully, willfully induce negative or toxic energy when you're around them? Number two, do they minimize you, or manipulate you, or exploit you for their own self-interest? Number three, do they frequently lie or exaggerate? Have you caught them out telling a bit of a lie, or not giving the full truth about something? Number four, do they expect you to be at their beck and call and fulfill their needs? Number five, do they demand constant attention or validation from you? Number 6, do they get easily angry or upset or put out if you do not cater to them, number 1, in your life? Number 7, do they have a lack of regard for your boundaries? Are they always testing them? Number 8, do they spread negativity in order to influence your mood, to bring you down a bit? Maybe you're feeling happy, so they bring in some real negative things about the news or things like that. Number 9, do they blame you for their situation in life, even subtly? 10, do they use you as an extension of themselves in order to serve their own false or public self? Number 11, last one. Do they use flattery, guilt, silence, blaming, comparison, shaming, threatening, rage, tears, gifts, love to manipulate you? And do they use these kind of intermittently? You see, those with narcissistic personality disorder, they don't actually have relationships with others as such. They have object relations. And this is the distinguishing feature here. You can tell with someone who has full-blown narcissistic personality disorder, there's no real relationship with them. You're an object, and there's a sense of that you're there to meet their needs. And this is constantly. It's not something that is momentary. I'm going to put some references for all of this information in the comments as well, because I do want to acknowledge, those who have come up with all of this information. It's not just come from me. And I think it's also important to keep this sort of a little bit more academic, because, we want to make sure that we're basing our facts in research. So if you are noticing these traits in your parent or partner, and they are not just a sort of out of the blue random thing, but they're rather a feature of how they are, who they are, really. If you feel it's more like who they are and not just something that happens occasionally, well, it's a pretty good sign that you're dealing with something far more all pervasive here. It's coming from the core, and that's something to really just don't take too lightly, because you're dealing here with an abuser, and that's the truth. And that is so hard, when you realize that's your parent, but it's the truth. And that's going to require some action on your part. With all of these things, it's important to trust your gut, because your gut's going to tell you anyway. A lot of the time, you kind of know, your gut tells you when you're around somebody who's not safe. And finally, also to forgive yourself for moments where maybe you have been a bit narcissistic. We all have. But and also to just be self-reflective as well, of perhaps tendencies to want to, I don't know, dominate, or things like that. Just to be aware of that yourself, but not to beat yourself up for that either, because the very fact that you can reflect on it, and that you're wanting to do that, well, it says it all. Okay, everyone, I think that's all from me for this week. Thank you so much to those of you again who sent me encouraging messages, or who commented. I really appreciate it, and I'm so glad it can be of some help in some way. And yeah, I thank you for that. Have a great weekend. Take care. Bye now.